this morning based on a particular question that I received, or Unyo received through email from Maria, Maria Bardoska in Toronto. Sometimes I can't keep those Canadians right down. I think she's just outside of Toronto. She's probably listening, maybe. So she was asking about I don't remember, do you remember the exact question? It was something about awareness. And I would sometimes use the idea, using images. Can you hear okay, Al? You're welcome to move up closer if you need to. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want her exact question?
Yeah, you can give me the question.
Her question is, what is exactly the, quote, muscle, unquote, we need to, quote, build up, unquote, during the meditation? Awareness itself or something that helps maintaining awareness?
Okay, good. So maintaining awareness is, we're right back into thinking and guesswork about what this is. So the awareness, fundamentally, I just use the idea of muscle, since the thinking process, I like to say, is quite muscle bound. We're always, aren't we? You've noticed that we're constantly thinking about everything, and it's a total abstraction. One of the ways I sometimes say this, I use the idea of a recipe is not a meal. Meal is the meal. A recipe is, you can carry that in your head, but you can't carry the meal in your head. It's an abstraction. It's conceptual. And sometimes, even all the time, if you see what a concept is, and you see what an incredible abstraction it is. One of the ways you can say this is you can think about a flower, a particular flower, all day long, but you can't smell that. You can't actually, you don't really have access to that. But the actual flower, you're actually receiving that fragrance. So when I say strengthen the awareness muscle, I'm saying sit down, hold very still, and just observe. And it takes us a while. It takes everyone a while to understand what it means to sit down and just observe. We end up thinking and thinking and thinking about that. Am I observing? Am I really looking at this, or am I just thinking about it? Okay, this is coming up. I'm contemplating this or that. This is wrong. I shouldn't be doing this. I should be, shouldn't, should. And we go back and forth. And like Maria's asking, what is it, the muscle that gets us to the strengthening the awareness, or is it the awareness itself? It seems that the access to this muscle, to continue to use that word, is something that we can make stronger or prioritize or get. I like to say it this way: the awareness is here and it serves the thinking process, or it is kind of a platform for it, or it integrates with it in such a way that the thinking becomes primary. Opinions, ideas, analyses, and we'll double up on that. If we have doubts about something, then we'll back up, and then we'll use all of our opinions, our ideas, our preconceptions to understand what's the direction we should take. And what I say and have said over and over, I know even Maria's even heard me say this, is don't do anything unless you have to. And this isn't just because I like to say dumb stuff, because the first thing when you think about that is, well, that's not going to work, because you have to do things. You have to eat. You have to sleep. You have to. But what I'm saying is, if you take that approach, then the activities that you are working with, you actually sink down into that. If you don't have to do something, you don't have to do it, then you could hold up and wait. And sometimes can be, not always, but sometimes this could just be called patience. You're just waiting for things you're waiting, because conceptually in our mind, we operate so much out of hope and fear, hope that things are going to get better and fear they're going to get worse, that we panic about it and we think, I got to do something about this. That's extra. That's like taking the awareness muscle, to use that same image, and just setting it aside and say, I'm going to think through this using concepts and ideas and everything that are completely abstracted from the actual visceral sixth sense feels contact with your environment, the actual contact. contact. All the senses, including the mind, are in a position of contacting their objects. And the most difficult one probably to see or to understand is thoughts are arising in the consciousness or in the awareness. The dynamic that is difficult to work with if we're worried and if we're or if we're operating out of the idea of trying to get somewhere or trying to accomplish something. It's difficult for us to rely on just bare attention, just hear, just seeing, just smelling, just tasting, just feeling, just hearing, to keep it very, very simple. But that's basically what the sitting practice of meditation in our words here, Japanese words for our shikantaza, are just precisely this, just this very simple situation. You can't think your way into this. If you begin to try to analyze it and use concepts as some way of getting to it, it becomes very challenging because the awareness itself gets kind of sidetracked or put in the back seat. I am not saying stop thinking. I'm not saying don't analyze. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying look at the priorities there. Bring some awareness into that so you can see your intention, the way you use, because the way you use thinking or analyzing or figuring out was another famous word for the ego uses. I got to figure this out. It's just like you might as well be putting a gunny sack over your head. Everybody know what a gunny sack is? You can tell your age. I don't have any, nobody's as old as I am. No kidding. A gunny sack is just an old burlap bag that they used to put potatoes in back in the 18th century. But it's like our fear about losing control or losing our reference points, about getting lost somehow, begins to be so strong that we'd rather let's just cover this up so we don't see too much or know too much. It's difficult to talk about this. It's difficult to see what you see from sitting and looking at doing this for a long period of time, decades, and begin to have an understanding of it, and then to see how would you encourage people to do this? How would you help people? How would I help? Like with Maria, how do I help? I've used those images. Now she's coming back to me with those. So is it the muscle is the muscle part the one where you develop and get strong so you'll go in and prioritize the awareness? Or is it just the awareness? And if it's just the awareness, I think what she's dealing with here is how do you do that? How do you do it? And so the way I'm saying is keep it very simple. Repetition is very, very important. And the only thing you can really control, if you haven't noticed this already, is the body. You have a little control over the mind, but it's difficult to it's difficult to work with thought patterns and emotions and memory and opinions and so on when that flood starts coming in. It's difficult to do anything with that because we are seduced into thinking that there's some way that we can get in there and get this to straighten up and be like we want it to be and live up to our expectations about how we should feel, what we should do. It's extremely self-centered, but not self-centered in the kind of the way where we all know 15 people and one of them is very egotistical. And then there's this other person who they hardly even seem like they have an ego at all. They're probably the most self-centered of all of the people there, but they just know how to act not self-centered. It's very sneaky in the sense that self-centeredness or ego is very, very good at at creating some kind of artificial reference point that is can be invisible to the scrutiny of other people. Some people always live about what other people are thinking about what I'm thinking. Other people are thinking about what I'm thinking about what they're thinking. If they can somehow get some kind of confirmation there, okay, I'm well hidden. No one will see this. I actually have people come and sit in front of me in the hojo, in the meditation, the interview room, that are completely hiding out. But they are not ready, you could say, for me to say, you're hiding out. Not that I wouldn't say that to someone if I could see there was enough openness for that to even work or make sense. I have people sometimes come in and say, I give you permission, help me, tell me what's wrong with me, help me. Sorry. Questions at this point? I can sit here and chatter all day long, so you don't need to bail me out. So Maria is not in a position, being in Canada, not in a position to really tune in, other than she's probably can watch, but to be able to talk or ask further questions. So if you want to go into that question a little deeper, we'll use her question. Because everybody here apparently completely understands what I just said. Yes.
Well, just to go off the second part of that question, which sort of becomes a comment, I guess. What about maintaining awareness, though?
Okay.
How could,
No, maintaining anything is very much about our self-centeredness or our narcissism or the seventh consciousness. If you're using that structure of the 8 consciousnesses, it's very much about me, and my territory, my stuff. It's incredibly sad to meet someone who is so locked down, who comes and says they want to meditate, but is so locked down in their preconceptions. And their awareness is very, very selective. And awareness operates in terms of trying to promote the agenda of that person that they think that they are. Good luck. We actually do this for lifetimes. And I'm not here to promote belief in past lives. I basically don't believe in anything. I don't believe in much anyway. It's not necessary to believe. If you can see what is happening right here all the time, you don't have to believe or disbelieve anything. There isn't anything else, actually, from the point of view of awareness, insofar as that's a point of view. So what am I saying? Can you paraphrase what I just said?
Very good question.
Okay.
What is relative awareness?
I'm hearing your voice. You're hearing my voice. That's relative. Keep going. There's the next one. What's absolute awareness?
Yes.
Don't hear anything. Nothing separate anymore. And the extensive way of saying that using concepts is you both hear and not hear. In other words, you hear it because it's relative, but you actually understand it more deeply than just the limited coming and going of that sound. Nothing actually happens in that area. There is a happening which self-centeredness or ego attaches to, and that's why we fear death, because we think we're here and this is going to disappear, but we got plenty of time. Should be okay for another 40, 50 years. Well, I can't say that. You can.
So if we're sharpening the blade of awareness, are both forms of awareness being sharpened?
Yes. You're just aware. You're actually aware of someone walks in the room with a red shirt on, because things are fairly toned down in here. You notice a red shirt, but you would notice a red shirt anywhere, but you might notice a little bit more here. Is that correct? So then you're aware of that, but then you're also the awareness is also not about just that as an object.
What is it about?
about that is not an object. I know.
If we have the feeling of having some kind of confusion, but we can't verbalize it, how do we relate that to our teacher?
Just what you just did. I mean, if you have that, then you would just say, I'm having some kind of confusion that I can't really verbalize. And what would the teacher say?
Sit more.
Keep sitting.
Are we sitting with the idea of eventually being able to form that?
The whole idea of eventual when the sitting, and that's when you get off the cushion, then you can think about eventual all you want. But when you're on the cushion, it should just be sharpening a knife. A knife doesn't even know what it's for. Awareness doesn't even know what it's for. Just like a knife doesn't, if you take that portion of the knife's lifetime, of which it's on the stone being sharpened, it doesn't know what's going to happen. That might be the entire life. Your entire life is sitting on the cushion. Your entire situation is there. There isn't any eventual.
We have questions from Sokuzan, Sandru, Shane, Chikme, and Ash. So I'll start with Sokuzan since she dialed in first.
Okay, good. I'm going to be busy for a while, I think.
Sokuzan's question is it possible to be aware of being aware?
I think, it's a conceptual construct. There's a valid question, but it's the construct actually holds back. It actually, because then we begin to look for that. Am I aware of being aware? So it tends to create another kind of watcher of a watcher. Watching, trying to see what is watching what. What do we get? And that happens. But that's just more more conceptual stuff that arises in order to try to find some reference point for the whole thing. No reference point is actually just that. It's no reference point. That's why it's so simple. And that's why there's no credential involved. And so therefore we can manifest as anything. You're no longer trying to be more aware. You're no longer trying to see if you're aware or not.
Sandru's question: is there a process of recognizing the mental image of the flower as consciousness to the video of the flower as a mental picture to being physically near the flower and knowing that is a mental picture as well, conventionally real but not ultimately?
Yes.
Shane's question: does the ego block the spotlight of awareness from certain areas?
Yes, I mean you could talk about it that way. The self-centeredness won't release its grip on its concepts and ideas and what's happening, what should happen, what did happen, what opinions and ideas it won't. So his images are a little bit different than what I would use.
What would you use?
I think it could show up different for everyone. I think the important thing is to spend a lot of time in the cushion. All you're really doing, we're on the cushion, what we're really doing is we're creating an artificial situation where we're taking everything that's in motion based on karma this whole body-mind complex is in motion all the time. And we're stopping insofar as we can. We're holding very still, and we're watching what continues to move, which generally speaking is the way you get to see the way in which you confuse yourself. You actually get, it's not particularly entertaining. So when it gets really difficult, we get up and sometimes even add on, well, I must be doing this wrong, because isn't meditation supposed to lead to being peaceful? Or so we jump into that. So ego wants to be part of it. My teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, once referred to that situation as ego wants to witness its own funeral. It wants to be there to see. It wants to see ego death and wants to see enlightenment. And it's not going to happen. Actually, there isn't any death of ego other than you see that it's unreal. Never did. It never was a solid situation.
Something that's not real can't die.
Good point.
From Chikmay, how does awareness develop the paramitas?
Slowly. I could say more if he has more.
Well,
But that's. I mean, we have people who have no idea what the paramitas are. So to start to go in there, it gets more difficult for other people to understand what's going on. But they are stages on the Bodhisattva path or the path of Mahayana Buddhism. So you can ask me about specific ones or something like that if he wants to.
and then from Ash in Connecticut, how is it that awareness seems like it disappears and it becomes easy to operate out of confusion?
How is it?
That it seems to disappear, that
No.
awareness seems to disappear.
Well, that's also awareness, but it can't be taken as a credential. You can't actually say, well, this is something that is somehow proving something that I'm getting somewhere. If you feel like you're getting somewhere, you're probably not. Mm-hmm.
So is being aware an improvement over confusion?
Is that your question? Is being aware an improvement over confusion? Yes.
But I thought we weren't supposed to get anywhere.
We're not.
So how can it be an improvement?
I don't want to disagree with you. I follow what you're saying. So there is a quality of that can happen. Just like if you meditate a lot, there's going to be a sense of settling down depending on your particular way of confusing yourself. There will be a sense of backing off on things. People will notice that you don't interrupt so much. People will notice that you seem to be listening to them more. In fact, they might even think there's something wrong with you because you're not acting the way you used to all the time. So it could be improvement like that. There are things that happen where you stop meddling with other people, but you don't just do it out of some kind of superior person who doesn't meddle anymore. You see that it's really none of your business to go in and challenge other people or fool around with other people's karma, causes, and conditions. The boundary there is between things is not just some kind of conceptual thing that you believe in. It's something you understand on a level that's very difficult to communicate to others. More from you or from anyone else?
Yeah. So when you speak of improvement, would that be more like we're not trying to get to a different state of being, like more peaceful, or, but to see that there have been some maybe incremental changes over the years from this
You
practice?
might see that, yeah, you
Okay,
might, but
that's-
to work, trying to get that to happen this is what's happening in a lot of what's been referred to as meditation cults. People get together and meditate. They don't want to do Buddhism because we don't need this crazy religion. We can just meditate. That's a complete misunderstanding of what this is. Trying to just use meditation, because you run into an area that you run into a part of the river where there's no bridge. There's no bridge because it's a misunderstanding. It actually misunderstands by thinking there is someone to become enlightened. There isn't anyone to become enlightened. That's why it's difficult.
So there's a follow-up question from Chikmei.
Yes.
Where is joyful effort? Is one of the paramitas.
Mm-hmm.
When we are meeting suffering beings where they are at, where is joyful effort when we are meeting suffering beings where they are at?
So the idea there is the first paramita, or joy, or generosity. It's just be with them. Don't try to pull people out of their suffering necessarily with your advice, your opinions, your ideas, but don't tell them they should meditate. All you have to do is be with them. Rub elbows a little bit. And then if you're with them, then if something actually changes in such a way, if they turn to you and say, well, I'm going through this, what would you do? Then there might be some opening for you to say something, but be very cautious about, your intention there. Quite often our intention is to get other people to do what we're doing. Don't do that. Since you asked, give me permission to tell you. One more thing about that is if you actually are with others and you have a sense of a rich or good feeling about you, you're starting to see through your own self-centeredness, and so this is powerful. It feels pretty good, but it's not something that can be maintained. The actual opening there is you actually are allowing everything. When I say allowing, you see that there's not a boundary there that's going to protect you from anything. That when you're with somebody, you feel their intensity. People are suffering. Sometimes people are suffering and they will even try to convince you they're not. Sometimes that's really difficult to be with someone who's intensely suffering, and you can almost see where they probably will never ask you about it. Shoka.
In the Heart Sutra, there's a line that says, Bodhisattvas take refuge in prajna paramita.
Yes.
And live without walls of the mind.
Yes.
What is the difference between a wall of the mind and natural boundaries?
If you live without walls of the mind, then natural boundaries are obvious. They're just, instead of having ideas about what you can do and what you can't do, you actually see the structure of things. Walls look like walls, instead of having walls in the mind that replace the natural boundaries of things. The natural boundary would be seeing that you are not separate from others, but also you don't, a beating heart doesn't try to become a kidney. You actually realize the differences, the incredible differences that we have. That's when you really see how different we are. Is when you see that we're not separate. Then you really see the boundary. And then you know that there's people that are all completely ready for you to help and to be with and to even give advice to, or even scold. Don't you do that. And then there are other people that you may be aware of how intense difficulty they're going through, but you do not have any permission to, there's a boundary there that's very natural, which usually is they don't trust you. They don't trust you, and they don't, it's not that, it's a feeling like they might sit and have coffee with you, they might call you up and want to go to a movie, or they might be sitting on the sofa practicing next to you. It might be part of your Sangha. But they really, when I say they don't trust you, it isn't you so much. They don't really trust anybody. When I say trust, I'm not talking about everybody should trust everybody. I'm just saying that they're operating out of a kind of container, and this is another self-centeredness. They're operating out of a kind of container that won't really, it's called walls of the mind, Muke Eko, in the Heart Sutra. Is that right? Muke Eko? I think I ask you that every time I say that, because it sounds like it's from something else. But it's walls of the mind that when those start to break down, then we see the natural boundary that happens. If you see natural boundaries, if you really lived with natural boundaries, there would be no government, because people would function out of their natural understanding of other people and would help those who was appropriate to support and help, and would mind their own business when it came to other situations, instead of operating out of what? Walls in the mind. Those people are this way, these people are this way. They should, they shouldn't, we should, they should. It's intense. If you watch the news for an hour a day, which I try to do, ouch. It's just like watching people hit each other over the head with clubs. They even take turns to make it look orderly. That's your turn to whack me one. I'm not going to try to understand this way down deep, where I can see that, a foot is not a skyscraper. It's a foot. But people get mixed up in that area and try and feel like they can actually manipulate their minds and other people's minds, and end up with things like political parties.
What is trust?
Trust is seeing that you're not any different than the space, seeing that you and others are not different than anything, not separate from anything. It's not believing this, or it's not trusting somebody. Like, deliberately, I'm going to trust that so-and-so will never pick my pocket or something, or will never, that was a relative trust. I don't know about that. I would say in that case, don't trust anybody. Give people the benefit of the doubt, and allow people to be genuine. Yes.
Two more questions. One from Ashley Carter Youngblood.
Yes, Ashley.
She asks, two parts actually. Do we need ego? And does it actually serve a useful purpose, or is it always merely a distraction?
Well, it's not real. It's always changing. It's always fluctuating. And you can experience this yourself if you sit down and spend some time watching the ego rise and fall, and watch the self-centeredness look for supports. Am I doing this? Should I do this? Shouldn't I do that? Shouldn't I? Constant, I like to call it discontinuous identity. So we're not trying to get rid of ego. So in that sense, when you're saying, does it serve does this discontinuous identity, serve some purpose? Yes. It's interacting with the milieu, which is your community or your Sangha or your world or your state, or your city, with beings in general. Most people are operating out of some kind of self-centeredness, and you can function that way too. It's just that you don't necessarily believe it. So when you're here and people over there, and people disagree with you or support you, you can see that people are disagreeing and supporting out of their preconceptions. They don't actually see that they're not separate from you. That they don't see the no separation. They don't see the natural boundaries that are occurring all the time between things. So you don't have to get rid of it. I guess you could say it's serving some purpose, but there again, that's kind of, I would say to Ashley, why don't you find out and let me know what you think? You look at it, see what you think.
And then from Jim Service,
Yes, James.
would you say more about the nature of the desire to meddle?
So the nature of the desire to meddle seems to be coming from some kind of arrogance and some kind of self-centeredness where we think that we can see what somebody else needs or doesn't need. That they should. How do I know about this? I do it. Not about stopping that. Not about being a really good person who never meddles. It's about seeing how that is flowing. You can't function in this relative world without and never get contaminated by anything. But awareness, like I often say, awareness is king or queen. Awareness doesn't really operate out of an individual, even if there's a living form here. That the awareness is apparently looking out of these 6 sense consciousnesses. So just seeing how you want to tell someone, correct someone, push someone, seduce someone. When I say that, I mean sell them something, anything. That's one of the 10 or one of the 16 precepts. Selling a wine of delusion. I got something you need. I know what you need to do. I see that operate in my situation being a meditation teacher, Dharma teacher. When I see someone, I see what they're doing. They've asked me to function as their teacher. And I see what they're doing, and I don't agree with it. I'm saying I don't agree when I think they should be doing something else. I usually don't say anything unless they asked. If they ask, then I might say something about it, but usually I don't. And that's because I see that I don't want it. I don't give advice in that sense. Unless somebody comes and says, this is happening. I don't know what to do. Can you help me? I might say, yeah, you should, you should buy a Toyota, not a General Motors car. Something like that. But really big things, I might have more say so about. When I say so, I might say something, but I'm not expecting you to mind. It's very challenging. Oh, yes.
3 more comments, questions. First of all, Ashley Carter Youngblood says, okay, will do, thank you. And then Cheek May, how is faith different than a reference point?
How's what?
Faith.
Faith? So I think it is a reference point. But it's the kind of faith, Buddhist idea of faith is just, we've heard this, we're going to check this out, we're going to look at this, we're going to give this the benefit of the doubt. Is the common way. I would like it if there was another way to say this, but we're going to take a look at this, and something here is inspiring us, something we don't completely understand, but we're going to check this out. We're going to do this anyway. We're going to study this for a while. I like to say, if you're studying Buddhism, you're a Buddhist. When you stop studying Buddhism, then no longer a Buddhist. That'd be simple. And how much you want to connect with that's up to you. If you want to receive precepts, if you want to actually have a change of your name, so that this situation you're studying can go as deep as possible. It's not something to sell. Was that? Bass speakers. Nice vibration. What?
Another follow-up question
Okay.
from Ashley Youngblood.
Yes.
You said we're not trying to get rid of ego, but isn't that the goal of enlightenment? Just to see the connectedness of all things and see that everything is not real, not to see the self?
What's the question again?
You said we're not trying to get rid of ego. But isn't that the goal of enlightenment?
What, getting rid of ego?
Just to see the connectedness of all things.
No, it is not to see the connectedness of all things is a statement of ego. Ego sees everything as connected. Wow, this is really spiritual. Really, I can see everything is so connected. You know, we're so connected. No, say it the other way around. Actually see that we're not separate. When you see we're not separate, then we see all the disconnections very, very clearly. You see that you're completely who you are. You actually take responsibility for this karma that is rising as whatever the name you have here. Body, speech, mind, the six sense fields and their objects. You actually are this. It's very, very separate. Separated. Just it's like the thumb talking to the little finger. Well, you know we're really connected here. The little finger's going to say, "Oh yeah, well I can do this without you. I don't need you." That's the kind of I don't need anybody. More.
The goal, just to see the connectedness of all things and see that everything is not real, and then in capitals, not to see the self.
Yeah. It's both real and not real. That's why it's so difficult, is because we want to totally get rid of it. If it's not real, if it's not real, then I want it out of here. I don't want any. But to actually push it away completely is to actually build it back up again, because it's something you're not going to have. You're not going to have that unreality. But to not do anything with it, then it can come and go. If it's not real, it's like a hand puppet.
And a follow-up question from her. So
Already?
we could get her on the phone.
Ashley, you need to come and have an interview.
Oh dear. Okay, hold on. So ego is actually not separate?
Yes, not separate.
All right. And then a question from Kozan and then Sandhu, and then we have to get ready for the new
Yes.
Dharma.
Well, let me take one over here from Bailey first. She's been waiting. Yes.
So when I'm off the cushion,
Yes.
I find myself reminding myself of your meditation instruction,
Okay.
just observe.
Yeah.
Kind of repeat that in my head a lot. Is that actually pointing to awareness, or is that trying to manipulate?
No, I think that's workable. I mean, as a post meditation, not on the cushion, but you're in your office space, or you're with your friends or your family, and you're saying, just look at this. You're saying, just observe, just look at this, look at the colors, look at the textures. So it's the idea of just bringing yourself back to your senses. So one I often use is don't forget gravity. It's a very simple force that you're subject to. All that you can't sleep or walk. You can't walk across the room without a force that you have no say-so about. That's how we walk around with gravity. So don't forget the real fundamental things. That's what I mean by that. Is that helpful? Yeah. So
A more nuanced question, I guess.
Yes.
Is, what if it feels like I'm just trying to be a more aware person?
that doesn't matter how you feel. Feelings are usually lies. Even the ones that are really intense, like, oh, this must be real life. I'm not going to do that. I don't feel like it. It's just like, raccoons don't feel like doing things. And they don't do things because they don't have little raccoon meditation teachers. Is that funny? It's like they don't. They have to function in the context that they're in. But in this situation, as human beings, we meet someone, as I did, who who just upsets as the old saying is, your apple cart. You're just no longer going to have, your life is not going to take the trajectory that it was starting to take. If you met someone that says, no, you need to look at what this is rather than just go off from birth to death. Birth, and then I did this, and then I did that, and then I did this, and then I did this, and went here, went there. I went to Paris. That was good. And then I took pictures, and I see here. And then I did this, and then I did that, and then I did it. And then I died. Is that sad? Yeah. Not right or wrong. It's just it's an opportunity to really see deeply what this is outside of Buddhism or anything else. Really deeply. We'll have an interview later. We'll talk more.
Sandra's question: do the six senses occur within the sphere of awareness?
Yes.
And then a follow-up: are we inclined to think of mental events as not real and physical things as real, while they are really happening in the context of awareness? I'm just not awake to see that.
I think there's a kind of a discrimination that helps us see that this is here, and then if I close my eyes and imagine this or think about this, that's a kind of has a kind of reality, but it's spread all over the place, and it's not something you can set a cup on. Oh, hi.
And then the last one from Sokuzan.
That's real. Oh, wait a minute, that
Let's
isn't
see.
real.
See, now this is this Sandru or is this Sandru? The Sandru I'm talking to is a Sandru in my head.
That's right there. Yeah. So
Sandru, you've never gone anywhere. You're still here in the Zendo.
So is that a real Sandhu here?
It's both real and unreal. In other words, and that's another way of teaching not to. We're not separate. Separated, but fundamentally not separate.
One more question from Sokuzan, then we do need.
Is Sokuzan in there too?
Yeah, Sokuzan's in there
Those
too.
guys are all in there together?
Yeah, and Ashley, Carter Youngblood, Ashley
Yeah.
Riley.
You must be really
I
crowded.
think Shane. Let's see.
I kind of see their feet sticking up between the keyboards there.
So
But-
Sokuzan's question is, how can you trust yourself if there is no self?
Who said that?
Sokuzan.
There's both a self and no self. You can't pick. We start out with no self because we're so attached to a self. But once we start to see there's no self, then we can't go that direction either, because then there's the non-self that we're attached to, that non-self. So it's a complete turtles all the way down. It is a complete not two. There's neither something. There's neither a self nor is there not a self. So that's why I say trust the space in which things occur. Something may occur there, it may not, but you're just with whatever is arising and falling away. So we're gonna have in about 10 minutes. We're gonna have the daily Dharma gathering, and I'm gonna talk about what.
What do you see?
What do you see?
So we'll break for a few minutes after we do the dedication of merit, and if anyone has to leave, please feel free to. Otherwise, you're welcome to stay and listen.
May the earth penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Dio San Chi Shifu Chi Son Mu Sa Mo Sa Oko Ja Oro Mi the 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.